Okay, so guys, I want to talk to you about why free speech is so important. I want to define a few things. I want to go over a few things in this article that I wrote and just like put this out there because I feel like I touched on it a little bit in the last video about it was basically about like how do we understand truth, how do we have a productive discussion. That's, it has to be a belief that you have, has to be true, and it has to be justified by facts. Okay, so let's look at free speech and why it is true and justifiable that free speech is important. Okay, so let's start with my introduction. So basically, free speech in our country and in every country is a type of legal construct, just like all rights, and it evolves with the society's understanding of justice and the good that that we that we see what we see as good, and it's sort of interpreted through the democratic process where people elect legislators and the judicial authorities who share their views on the role of limits of free speech. So it's, in other words, shaped by who we elect because who we elect determines that legal construct. Now, you could say right now that there's somebody in power that really doesn't gel with my or a lot of people's concept of what free speech is. And I could get into that, but I'm going to stay in the abstract for the moment right now. But, you know, so these interpretations, basically, by those elected officials, shape how free speech is applied within the context of our society. So, but as the conditions shift, obviously, things change and the, legal framework surrounding speech changes as well. So I'm going to define justice. I'm going to look at a few major legal cases that have shaped American free speech and discuss the costs associated with protecting it and ultimately argue that free speech is essential even when it's uncomfortable or controversial. So, what is justice? Okay, to me, as I define it, it is an adherence to the law. Laws can uphold justice, and they can uphold injustice too, though. So, true justice, though, is what is morally right and fair. Beyond mere legality, as citizens in a society built on democratic principles, we bear, like me, like you, we bear the responsibility to advocate for justice, to advocate for just results, ensuring laws reflect what is right, not just what is written. Okay, so there are some drawbacks. Freedom can be oppressive depending on the perspective. Now, okay, free speech is not always experienced as liberating by everyone. One person's freedom of expression can be another person's oppression. You know, where, somebody might call somebody a slur. They might, have the freedom to take away the voter rights of certain people just because they don't have an ID, even though they can vote and they are a citizen and all that. You know, Socrates talked about something like this, where he warned that a society that exalts freedom above all else may eventually use it to justify the right to oppress. Okay. For example, the here's another example. The freedom to build without safety regulations or to pay workers unlivable wages is not truly freedom, but it's exploitation. Okay, so the role of law in free speech. Okay, the First Amendment should protect speech that holds those in power accountable. Most agree to this. However, there's foreign and domestic actors that can weaponize this for harmful purposes, and legal systems have to, navigate this. Right now, We have AI generated videos that are so good that it can fool so many people and persuade them of things that are wrong. New methods of slander have been invented through this AI video technology, where you can show something that a president or some politician is doing when he's not actually doing it. And this is a danger. There's a danger that we have to navigate and get on. Recently, the federal government has put a pause on regulation of uh, basically LLMs and uh, those types of things. Um, eh, who knows for what purposes? But it's clear that something should be done, but this administration has done the opposite. They have put in a ban on regulations for this new dangerous technology. Does that make sense? I don't think it does. So, anyways, here's where perhaps free speech can be improved, because there are exceptions to free speech protections, such as laws against verbal abuse, which are upheld because such speech can lead to measurable psychological harm. Victims could suffer from anxiety disorders, suicidal like issues, or even resort to violence due to prolonged verbal attacks. These cases illustrate that not all speech is harmless. Okay, let's put that aside. But also, foreign governments can manipulate free speech as well. Foreign governments exploit American free speech protections to disseminate propaganda. And I'm sure that just like when I was talking about those AI videos, they're going to use that to fool Americans into thinking all sorts of things. Maybe just even confuse them with sort of conspiracy theory nonsense to keep them occupied and away from real political discourse that would bring our country forward. Uh, they want to manipulate. They use sophisticated strategies to influence vulnerable demographics too. They're playing they're having a full view of both sides of our political system. Let's say that Russia is doing this. They're looking at Democrats, and there was actually an example of this in Texas where they created an event where Democrats would want to go and protest something, and they created another event where the Republicans would protest the protest. So they purposely created this very hostile environment to almost create violence between the two political parties. It's sowing discord. It's something that should be taken seriously. And since then, there have been some legal changes, I believe, in that regard. Now, um, political dissent and legal limits. Okay, we have Edward Snowden and Julian Assange, and they have faced severe consequences for exposing government activities, even peaceful acts like calling for boycotts related to the Israel Palestinian conflict have resulted in punitive legal repercussions. And it's just like, gosh, why is that something that the government is allowed to do? This, well, like I said, we voted, America voted for this, and we are seeing the results where they believe that any type of criticism of a foreign government basically is anti Semitic. This is written into a bill that they've actually put forward. Now, let's get off that and go back to another legal case. The famous phrase that you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. It originates from Schenck versus United States, a 1919 Supreme Court case involving the Espionage Act. The defendant opposed the military draft, and his speech was deemed unprotected. Today, many would argue that his dissent should have been protected, yet this ruling set a precedent for restricting speech that challenges government authority. This precedent helps explain why Assange, who exposed potentially damaging military information, is being persecuted under the same Espionage Act. The government fears such revelations may discourage military enlistment and erode public trust, of course. Whether this justifies the legal action, I would say it doesn't. Yeah, a lot of people debate it, but I would say it does not. Now, conclusion, free speech is definitely worth the cost. Free speech is a dynamic and evolving principle shaped by the values and struggles of each generation. While it can be exploited and has its real costs, social, political, and emotional, it remains an essential pillar of democracy itself. It enables citizens to hold the powerful accountable. Without it, justice becomes stagnant, and democracy loses its soul, which resides in us, the people, right? So, for these reasons, we must accept the costs of free speech as necessary burdens in pursuit of a freer and fairer society. So, thank you very much for listening, and that has been my video. You can subscribe, you can like, you can do all that sort of stuff. Alright, so see you in the next video.